Hello, so we are going to introduce our little report. It consists in presenting our trip in London from March 31st to April 5th. To get there, we had to take the bus at 4 in the morning, which was pretty rough. Then we took the ferry and then the bus again. When we got there, we went for a walk in London. We've seen a lot of famous monuments such as the Big Ben or political monuments like the Parliament or Buckingham Palace, which was pretty interesting because we knew that the Queen was there thanks to the flag on top of the roof. Then we went in a park where there were a lot of squirrels, which was really funny. We also went in Trafalgar Square with its big screens and Chinatown, town that we liked a lot. I'm pretty sure you know why. After we've visited a part of London, we met our family, which was very nice and welcoming. The host was half French, half Greek, which was easier for us to communicate. The rest of the week, we have visited a lot of museums and monuments, such as the Museum of London, the National Gallery, which was our favorite, the British Museum, the Tower of London. We've also seen the famous Gherkin, the Docklands of London, and many more. We also went to the famous street called Oxford Street, the very last day to shop, which was really great too. This is why we would like to tell you a little bit more about these places and emphasize London landmarks, architecture, and urban landscape. And plus, we are also going to describe London as an European and world metropolis through time on a political, an economic, and last but not least, on the cultural side.
So when we arrived in London, we had lunch and then we went for a walk through Westminster to visit the district. The first thing we saw was Big Ben and the House of Parliament, which is the meeting place of the House of Commons and the House of Lords, and it was built during the Middle Ages. In 1834, a disastrous fire burned most of the palace to the ground. The only surviving part of the building was Westminster Hall. Therefore, most of what we see today is from the 19th century. The Palace of Westminster features three main towers. At the north end of the palace rises the most famous of the towers, the Elizabeth Tower, commonly known as Big Ben, and it houses the great clock of Westminster. Just next to the Parliament there is Westminster Abbey, which is a large and mainly Gothic church of the city of Westminster, built in the 10th century. It is one of the most notable religious buildings in the United Kingdom, and it has been a traditional place of coronation and royal weddings. The abbey also serves as the burial for many monarchs and artists, so it is stuffed with tombs, statues, and monuments.
Then we passed in front of 10 Downing Street, the official residence and office of the Prime Minister. Also, we passed in front of the Horse Guards, and then we crossed St. James Park, the oldest of the royal parks of London. We saw squirrels and lots of various ducks. Then we went to Buckingham Palace, the official London residence of the Britain monarchs. The Buckingham House was built during the 18th century with the Baroque architectural style, but then it was transformed to Buckingham Palace during the 19th century, so most of what we see today is relatively new. For instance, this side of the palace was added in the 1840s. However, it was bombed no less than 7 times during the World War II, and the last details were complete in the 20th century. After that, we went rapidly to Covent Garden, a popular shopping and tourist site where you can meet lots of street performers there. Finally, we met our host family and slept well after this long and exhausting day.
During the second day, we visited the largest museum in the United Kingdom, the British Museum. It has a collection of more than 7 million objects and spans a period of more than 2,000 years. It was founded in 1753 and designed by Foster and Partners. The Queen Elizabeth II Great Court transformed the museum's inner courtyard into the largest covered public square in Europe. It is a 2-acre space enclosed by a spectacular glass roof with the world-famous reading room at its center. In the afternoon, we visited St. Paul's Cathedral, which is one of the most famous sites of London, with its dome among the highest in the world. The Great Fire burned the old St. Paul's Cathedral to the ground, so the present church, dating from the late 7th century, was designed in the English Baroque style. We went on the top of the dome, from where we have a wonderful 360 degrees view of London skyline, which the cathedral itself is part. Before going back to our families, we visited Shakespeare Theatre. The Club Theatre has been built by an acting company which Shakespeare belonged to. It opened in 1599, but it burned to the ground in 1613 because of a theatrical cannon which fell. The new Club Theatre opened in 1997.
The third day, that's to say Wednesday, we went to the famous museum called the National Gallery, museum where there were no sculptures but only paintings, which was more interesting from our point of view. We had to answer questions, so unfortunately we didn't have the chance to admire all the paintings. There were tons of different paintings from different epochs and periods of the history, from different painters and for different themes, such as the birth of Jesus Christ, wars, or even self-portraits. Then we went to Trafalgar Square and had some leisure time to eat, so we went to Chinatown. And because lots of rooms were closed when we went to the museum, we had to come back to finish the quiz. And we enjoyed the museum so much that we have forgotten to be on time for the meeting, which was pretty surprising. Then we got in the London Eye to enjoy the beautiful landscape and skyline of London. And from there, we had the chance to have a beautiful view on the Big Ben and the Parliament. And after this amazing experience, we went to see a little video in 4D, which was pretty good too.
Next day, we visited the Canary Wharf. It's a business district located in the east of London. It's one of London's main financial centers. The Docklands was, a few years ago, the world's busiest port. The first office tower, Canary Wharf Tower, or now One Canada Square, was built in 1990. There are 3 of the highest skyscrapers of United Kingdom: 1 Canada Square, 8 Canada Square, and 25 Canada Square. Then we went to the Museum of London, founded in 1976. It documents the history of London from prehistoric to modern times.
The Gherkin, also known as the 30 St. Mary Axe, is a skyscraper in London's main financial district called the City of London, also known as Square Mile. It opened in April 2004. It has 41 floors. The tower is 591 feet tall and is located on a street called St. Mary Axe. It was designed by Norman Foster and Arup engineers. The building has become an iconic symbol of London and is one of the city's most widely recognized examples of contemporary architecture.
Afterwards, we went to Greenwich. It played a major role in the history of astronomy and navigation, and is best known as the location of the prime meridian. There is a pleasing tradition about it that still remains today. In order to help passing ships to synchronize their clock to GMT, the red time ball installed atop the observatory drops daily to mark the exact moment of 1 p.m. And later we visited the National Maritime Museum. The last day, we went to the Tower of London. It was built at the beginning of the 11th century by William the Conqueror. The most famous tourist attraction in the Tower of London is the collection of crown jewels, which is exposed since the 17th century. Most of the jewels were created around 1660. A lot of jewels, older, were also destroyed by Cromwell. One of the most beautiful pieces of the collection is the first Star of Africa, which is set in the scepter of the cross. After that, we went to the London Bridge. It's a combined bascule and suspension bridge which crosses the River Thames and opened in 1894. This kind of bridge was built in order to keep allowing access for tall-masted ships because London docks were still in use and also to allow cars to cross the river. It's close to the Tower of London, from which it takes its name, and has become an iconic symbol of London. We also saw the City Hall. Then it was time for us to take the ship.
Then we had 3 hours of free time and we decided to go to Oxford Street to do some shopping. So Oxford Street is a famous avenue in the West End of London. It has about 300 shops and it is approximately 1.5 miles long. It is the busiest shopping street in Europe. At night, we went to the most visited modern art gallery in the world, Tate Modern. It holds the national collection of British art from 1900 to the present day and international modern and contemporary art. We saw lots of strange paintings and sculpture there, and from a point of view, it didn't look like any art. But maybe it's just because we don't have the artistic spirit. Finally, our trip came to its end. We had to take the ferry and go back to France.
To put it in a nutshell, thanks to what we have visited, we can finally say that London is an European and international metropolis. On the first hand, because we've seen its financial district, which gathers all the powerful buildings, such as the Gherkin, London Stock Exchange, the Bank of England, the Canada Square, which is a very important building, the Shard of Glass, which is the largest building in Europe since 2012, and many more. On the second hand, we've also seen cultural and touristic monuments and places such as famous and numerous museums, the London Eye, theatres, famous towns, and last but not least, political monuments such as the Buckingham Palace or the Parliament.